Welcome to Haunt Topic Radio, the podcast for haunters by haunters. These are our scary visions.
Welcome back, Haunter, to another episode of Haunt Topic Radio. Who's going to Transworld Halloween and Attraction Show? If you're going, look me and Daryl up at the Scarab Badges booth. It moved this year. We're a few booths down. We are now 1425. We'll be handing out some cool swag prizes and flinging some badges. So come say hi. In this episode, we get Leonard Pickel on. If you've been around the industry for a while, Leonard has been here. I call him one of the founders, but he's been around, close to 60 years doing this. He is known for his pickle theory designs. Some people call him the godfather of haunting, so he actually helped me out quite a bit when I was starting my haunted attraction. And we talk about a bunch of stuff. This was an Ask the Haunt Expert session. We had people in the chat asking questions. We were answering questions, taking questions, and getting ideas from people in the group. And if you're interested in joining these monthly sessions, go to haunterstoolbox.com and sign up to be a member. And we will send you emails and updates letting you know. All you gotta do is become a member. It automatically signs you up to our email list, and we will send you updates. Some things we talk about: scare actor training, building wall panels, tent haunts, time ticketing, haunt safety, and more and more and more. You just have to tune in. Come on, it's less than 2 hours. You got it. Pick up a bunch of golden nuggets along the way. And if you see Leonard, or you know Leonard, reach out to him on Facebook or go to his website, entrepreneurs.com. We'll let him know you heard him on the podcast and let him know you learned something if you did. Well, come visit us in Transworld next month. We should have one more podcast coming out before the show. We would love to see you and meet you if you are a fan and a listener. It's always weird meeting you fans because we don't think about it. We just put these out and people come up to the booth. It's like, you all sound just like your podcast. So it's pretty cool. We do appreciate it. We love to talk haunt. Well, let's roll into it. Our Ask the Haunt Expert session with the one and only, the Godfather, Leonard Pickel. Let us know a little bit about yourself. Give us your 5-minute elevator pitch, kind of how you got started, some of the things you did along the way. The Haunt Attraction magazine, I think, was one of them that you've done, and HauntCon and all that. You've been around the industry for, well, your bio says 40 years, but I think it's almost 50 now. So
I would imagine it's closer to 60, to be honest.
60?
I need to fix that, yeah. Yeah, no, I built my first haunted house in 1975 in a college dormitory. I was planning on being an architect, so I graduated with a degree, started apprenticing in Dallas. But I had so much fun doing the haunts while I was in college that I volunteered with the March of Dimes, and I chaired their event for 4 or 5 years before I decided I was going to get rich doing haunted houses, and went off and, begged, borrowed, and stole whatever we could find. I built my first haunted house on credit cards and pocket change, ran it, operated it for the year. It was a critically acclaimed success, but when all was said and done, I was $20,000 in debt, which I thought was a huge failure, because the haunted house is a get rich quick scheme, right? So I was in debt. I went to I was trying to figure out what went wrong. And so I said, now that I've started a business, I thought I should go learn how to do that. So I took a class at the community college on how to start a business, and, sat in the back of the room in horror as the guy told me not to do everything that I'd already done. And one of the things he said was, if you're going to start a business, you should be an expert in that industry. How do you become an expert in that industry? Well, you write a book. So at the time, I had a huge number of cut sheets that I had done for different room designs, described, what the space would look like, what the actor would do, what kind of pieces we needed. And I really kind of started off doing that with the March of Dimes, because I had to show them what we were doing, let them know what needed to be bought, or scrounged up. And, so I had this huge stack of notes on things that I would want to do and things that I'd like to try, and a bunch of room design. So I put those into a kind of a little pamphlet and started selling it on really started selling it on Fangoria magazine. I took a little classified out in the back of Fangoria magazines, and some of those people that bought those issues of that original magazine, I'm still friends with. It's pretty, or that little booklet. It's pretty funny that I still know some of the people that bought that thing originally. But sold those for a while, and that allowed me to build up a database. I went to the library, which was the only source of information, back in the day, and pulled out every newspaper. When if you went to the Dallas library, and they would collect the main newspaper from Chicago and Detroit and all the big cities, they would have a copy of it there. So I'd go get the last Friday before Halloween newspapers and go through those, and I'd write down the addresses and the names and any information that I could get from that, and built a database of haunted houses around the country so that I could send out flyers, and invite them to buy this book. And that database turned into, I had Mark Klein of Natural Bridge, Virginia, told me one time that he gets the most business he's ever gotten at the time from a newsletter that he would send out to past clients. And I thought, the haunted house industry needs a newsletter. So I started Haunted Attraction, which was began as a 8-page newsletter, and built that up into something that became Haunted Attraction magazine. It went from a newsletter to a 50-page magazine, full color, over the years. And and one thing that I've always been really big on is sharing my ideas. I've never been afraid to tell people something that I was working on or some idea I came up with, because I realized that a long time ago that if you live in a bubble and you're only thinking of ideas by yourself, you can only take that so far. Your knowledge, your experience, your history can only take you so far. But if you can share that with a couple of people, they may have the answer to your biggest haunting problem, but until you talk to them about it, you're not going to know. So I've always been pretty big about sharing my ideas. Like I said, I shared my room design concepts. And that first booklet turned into a second booklet, and there was a third one after that I would sell people, and it's turned into the magazine. And we were always sharing room design ideas and going through haunts, and letting people know what the rest of the industry was doing. And that turned into a convention that we called HauntCon. I ran it for, I think, 16 years before we sold it. Ran the magazine for 50 issues before we sold it. The guy that bought the magazine ran it into the ground and almost immediately. I told him he was a home haunter at the time, and I said, whatever you do not open your own pro haunt, because I have a huge problem getting that last issue out, because I'm working on clients' haunts, and that was the biggest problem with the magazine. It wasn't coming out on time like it needed to. It was hard to find enough vendors to buy enough ads, and it's just like a haunted house. It was content, pricing, subscribers or attendees. It was really very much like a haunted house. It was kind of a 3-headed monster, and every time I got one of them fed, the other two were growling at me. So it sold it to a guy. He ran it into the ground. Sold HauntCon to a company that was a convention company. I thought if anybody could take HauntCon to the next level, it would be a company that specialized in conventions. Sold it to them. They ran it into the ground, so it's been a hard road of lessons for me to learn that I'm really great at starting stuff. I'm not really great at making a lot of money with it. Like I said, my first haunted house, I was at $20,000 in debt when everything was said and done. And my dad, who was the practical one, came to me and he said, you've got so many people coming to you wanting you to design haunted houses for them. Why don't you start a company that's a design company for haunted houses and stop taking the risk of doing them yourself? So that's the path that I took. Looking back on it, I would probably be much wealthier and would have had a lot better time if I had stuck with doing my own haunt in Dallas. But I might not be as well known, and I'm the design guy. I'm really not an operations guy. I love building haunted houses, but I'm really more of the design guy. So I was notorious for going in at 5:00 on Halloween day and rearranging some panels because the room wasn't quite working right. I was trying to figure out how to make it scarier, to the dismay of the actors that would go running into their positions and run square into a wall that wasn't there yesterday. But so I was always about the design and tweaking the design and making it better. And so having multiple clients throughout the year allows me to do one design and set it aside, do the next design, set it aside, and not do quite so much tweaking as I did when I was running my own haunt. But yeah, I did my first haunted house in 1976 in a college dormitory, and I've been haunting every year since. Well, I love to go see haunted houses in October when my clients are all open and operational. I cover the countryside, seeing as many haunts as I can, and keeping my finger on the pulse of what everyone is doing, and as well as picking up new ideas or other concepts. And I don't really like to steal an idea from a haunt, but I love picking up something from one haunt and then picking up something from another haunt and putting them together and creating something new. It's they say there are no new ideas. There are only two old ideas put together for the first time. So I like to do a lot of that when I'm out and looking for haunted houses. And Entrepreneurs works very much like an architectural firm, in that somebody comes to me and say, yeah, we're going to do a Halloween event, we need help. I'm happy to consult on the marketing and help them with location and making sure that the building is going to fly with the building department, that kind of stuff. But the majority of stuff that I do is design work. And to me, a haunted house is a movie that you walk from scene to scene. So I'm all about the storyline. What kind of evil is in this building? What kind of minions has this evil created? And why are we going in? Why is the public going into this building that we know is scary? And try to tie all that together with the time frame and the location. What kind of space is it in? Is it in the castle? Is it in a hospital? Is it in a Victorian mansion? And put all that together into a storyline. And the storyline, while it's important that you should put that on your website, and because there's some people that are really that into it, the storyline is something that really is as much for the designer as it is for the people that are going through. It's a map, it's a pathway to get from point A to point B in the story, and without veering too far off. That if you have a detailed storyline and you stick to the storyline, it keeps you from having a clown in one room and the alien monster in the next room and Frankenstein in the room after that. So it keeps it because the goal is to suspend people's disbelief. People just bought a ticket, they just stood in line. Now they're going into this Victorian mansion, they're going into this medieval castle. You're trying to make them feel like they're actually in the castle or in the Victorian mansion. So keeping that common storyline throughout the attraction and not throwing a bunch of shotgun different themes at them helps them to, in my opinion, to suspend their disbelief so we can get their lizard brain, so when involved, so that when that actor pops out with a chainsaw, they know that they're supposed to run.
This podcast episode sponsored by Scarlet Badges.
We always were looking for ideas to get those actors to take it to the next level. I really want to do something that they can use more than just a meal, or they can use more than just that a boy, that a girl. They love this stuff, but it's not really promoting a haunter. And then I sit down, Scarlet Badges comes out. That's when I realized this is amazing, because not only is it giving them an attaboy, but it's also promoting them all year round. And to promote somebody, to give somebody accolades all year round and have them be able to wear it on their shoulder with pride means a lot. This right here says this is who nailed it on this day in this year for the rest of their life, for the rest of their haunting life. And that's what I really love about this product, is you're able to give haunting to somebody an attaboy 365 days a year. And so hats off to you guys. I think this is a great product, and I wish you the best of luck because it's awesome.
Get your Scare Badges at scarebadges.com.
So the house behind you, what's the story behind that? And can you tell us a little bit about the storyline about that?
The house behind me?
The back wall, the wallpaper you have behind you.
Oh, that is a tent haunted house. It was built to go in Milwaukee. It's actually changed hands several times. They sold it 2 or 3 times. It's now in North Carolina, I think. But it was designed as it was a tent haunted house. There was a 40 by 100 tent that sat on the property, and then that facade was built out of panels. I try not to do anything larger than 4 by 8 or 4 by 10 panels, and set up in front of the tent and ready to. And so the people entered and exited through the facade, and then they went through the haunted house, and it was in a black tent behind them. It's a it's really, because my background is architectural. I always all of my facades I really come up with really cool, I think, facades for different haunted houses. I didn't think about this, but we could run a scroll a bunch of photos while we're talking, so I have people have something to look at. If you want to do that,
Yeah.
you'll have to share me.
You want to share your screen?
Yeah, let's see if I can set it.
Very bottom green arrow.
Yeah.
So guys, while Leonard's getting that together, many of you guys know Leonard from the industry. Please ask your questions in either Facebook or Zoom. There is a link inside this meeting that will take you to Zoom. If you guys care to come over to Zoom, we have that going on too. We also have Facebook chat going on as well. So you can enter your questions in there. So Leonard, I think the first time I met you was in a haunt con. Might have been New Orleans, face to face anyway. We've been kind of doing video trainings for a while now. You have several trainings in our Haunters Toolbox library at haunterstoolbox.com. There are stuff over there from designs, how to get started. There's a bunch of, I think you might have done 3 or 4 classes for us over there. So if you guys are interested, haunterstoolbox.com, go over there. There's some free material and there's some paid memberships as well. We do trainings every month. You get access to all of our stuff on how to start and grow your haunted attraction.
So how do I get this to start scrolling?
There might be something inside your Photoshop in the software you're using, just like maybe arrows or start slideshow. While we're waiting that to load, Dave has a question. Is it still possible to start up a new haunt these days? Or if you haven't already started one, is it too late? Is it too late to start?
No, I don't think so. I get clients. I get 3 or 4 clients every year that are interested in trying to get started. I talk to people. People call me all the time about with all kinds of different questions, and you feel free. Just Google my name. It shows up like a rash. If you want to contact me, it's easy enough to do. But haunted houses have never been an easy way to make a living. But it certainly is possible. Location is the absolute hardest thing to find. Funding is a very close second, but location is definitely the first thing you've got to lock down, and it's hard to do without cash. So you kind of have to have your funding as well. But no, I see haunted houses that, in some of the haunted houses that we work with, open up for the first time and start making money pretty soon. A haunted house is a business just like any other. It's a 3 to 5 year payout. So it certainly is not a get rich quick scheme. But it is something that you can make money with. You've got to start. I would almost start today. I would almost start a year out. I would, make sure that I went to all the haunted houses I could find in October, make notes about pricing and how big they are and, how many rooms are in each attraction. Multi-element is definitely the way to go, in my opinion. And it doesn't, as costs skyrocket, COVID did not do us any favors for as far as money, as far as plywood costs and that kind of stuff. So, and the recession hasn't helped any either. So, but can it be done? Yes. There's a lot to be said for starting small and growing into it and not trying to start off with a brand new huge event. However, those are the ones that become profitable faster. So it's definitely a not an easy way to make a living. And to be honest with, in most cases, if a haunt owner really looked at their hourly, how many hours they're putting into their event and what they're actually making out of it, they might be better off working at McDonald's.
How's the old meme go? If you want to make $1 million in a haunt, start off with 2 million.
Start off with 2.
To me, I think it's like you said, location is hard to find, and the way property values are right now. It all depends where you're at. Too, like rural Missouri, you can get a few acres of land for not too bad. All depends what kind of location it's in. If you want to do like an outland, I know a lot of seem like outdoor haunts may be cheaper to start up, but there's more things, weather, and how those outdoor haunts are. If it rains 2 weekends, you're just out. So, but
yeah, rain will hurt you no matter what. But it'll kill a hayride. A trail or a hayride. Bad weather will just kill it. It'll hurt a haunted house, but it'll kill a hayride. So definitely, when you're thinking about if you're in a property in a location that it tends to rain or snow or something on you every October, you definitely do not want to put a haunt there, because it's not going to be good.
What do you think the ideal length of an attraction at a multi-attraction park? So let's say you had 3 attractions.
I typically I like to see you have at least 3 attractions, and they need to be 2,000 to 30 to 3,000 square feet each. In a 20,000 in a 2,000 square foot haunt, I can put about 13 rooms. The lineal feet of that is probably 300 plus lineal feet through the attraction. So something in that range would probably be where I'd like to see you go. And it's going to cost you probably $35 a square foot to get that to build that from scratch. And then of course the marketing is all about is really where it's at. That's what you're trying to do, is market the thing. So you need to spend $3 a head for a brand new event. $3 a head is your cost of customer acquisition kind of thing. So that's really what you need to spend in marketing. And if you'll spend that money and spend it in the right place, then it becomes a math problem, really.
Where do you see most of the marketing being spent at?
I am not the marketer, but it used to be radio. Radio used to be king, but
I think digital radio kind of took that over.
Maybe somebody needs to tell me how to make this work.
Is it not loading on your end?
It didn't want to, and I'm not seeing.
Because I think if you're trying to load that as a slideshow, it may be trying to load that whole folder into a slideshow, so it might be having a hard time pulling up all those pictures at the same time if you have a lot of photos in there.
I should be able to just click on that. Nope.
What do you think about setting up outdoor haunts?
It's definitely a cheaper way to go to build, to do a trail or a hayride or some kind of corn maze or something like that. That's definitely going to be the cheapest way to get into the industry. But, but again, you're trying to do multi-element and you want them to be different. So here we are. So you want the attractions to be different in different styles and different themes too. So you don't want to really have 3 trails on a property because it just seems like more of the same. You're still there, right?
Yep.
Okay, good.
Here's some music in the background.
Yeah, maybe I don't know how to cut that off either.
Is that part of the video?
If I mute it, will that mute you though?
Can you hear me?
Can you still hear me?
Yep. You probably can't hear me though.
Yeah.
What is the video? What is that? Is that coming from the video or?
It's just on this file, I think.
Oh.
I used to use this at the. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay. All right. There we are. So here, that's that facade that you were talking about. That's in the backgroround.
Oh, we don't see anything yet.
Oh, you don't see it?
Mm-mm.
I'm in slideshow.
Have you shared it with Zoom? You got to reshare it. Can you share it, the green arrow at the bottom of Zoom? Share your screen. There we go.
Yep. I don't know what I'm doing.
If you just want to blow up that screen, maybe we can just work off of that screen.
So this is what we were kind of talking about. There's a facade sitting in front of a tent. Should have worked on this before we got going.
We're experiencing technical difficulties.
There we are.
Hey, there we go. And so the arrow, there you go.
So all of that was done with panels.
The arrows on the side, you should be able to go back and forth. There should be arrows on the side.
Yep.
When you hover. So.
And that's that same facade in front of the tent. I think the photo that's the same facade that was on the photo that you posted for the webinar too.
Yes.
And it was in a building at that time, though. It wasn't in a tent. But that's all panels, different sections, so that it comes apart easily and goes back together easily. This is some early sketches. These are embarrassingly old, but that was that room design from a haunt that I did at the Playboy Mansion, and back when Hugh Hefner was still alive. I've done some high profile attractions, but the majority of my clientele are people that are trying to get started. So a lot of the haunts that I do are very low budget, unfortunately. But I've kind of learned, I think, to be able to maximize the dollar amount for people that are trying to get started. The panels that we use are 2 inches thick, which means that they store in half the space of like a 4-inch studded wall would if you have to take the thing down. And it was designed to be a system where it's set up quickly and strikes quickly. Again, I started with the March of Dimes, so we were finding vacant buildings or parking lots to put a tent up and that kind of stuff all the time. And so it had to be something that could be set up quickly and then taken down quickly as well.
So
and used for the next season as well.
Do you know what causes haunted attractions to shut down before they even get started? The top 3 roadblocks are lack of funding, lack of leadership, lack of resources. As a member of the Haunter's Toolbox, you get instant access to the tools you need to start and grow your own haunted attraction business. To get started, become a member at haunterstoolbox.com. Are you using 2x3s, 2x2s?
I use 2x3 uprights and then 2x2s between the uprights, with one at the bottom, one at 3 feet, and then one at the top if the panels are 8 feet. Typically what I do these days is my typical spec is a 10-foot tall panel. Some of these photos these are photos from the Morris Costumes haunted house that I built for them, and it actually has 12-foot tall walls. But the problem with most houses have an 8-foot ceiling, or used to, but when you do a haunted house, that 8 foot doesn't have a ceiling. It just has, if the walls stop at 8 feet, it has a very clipped off feeling. If you'll raise those walls up another 2 feet, it gives you a lot of your lighting kind of disappears into the darkness, and you're not able to see over the wall into the lighting that's flashing in another room someplace. So typically, as a standard panel size, I spec a 10-foot tall panel, 12 if the budget is higher, but at least 10. Unless there's no ceiling height, then you have to go to 8 or even lower. But
you're the one that started the triangular
theory, right? System. Yeah, it was. I had just graduated from college with an architectural degree, and so we had learned in structural class that a triangle is stronger than a square. If you have 4 boards and you put a nail in each corner, that's going to rack on you. It won't keep its square shape. But if you put one diagonal across, now even though there's only one nail in each corner, it's still going to hold that shape. And so and I knew that, and we had just, the first year that I worked with the March of Dimes, they had just come up with the concept of a panel before they were coming in and studding everything out and sheeting it in plywood, and then painting it. And then when they took it apart, all they had was a pile of plywood and a pile of 2x4s. They didn't really have anything that would save them time when they built it the following year. And they had just come up with, at least March of Dimes in Dallas, had just come up with the concept in 80, what would that have been? 83, maybe 83 or 84, 1984, and actually the people down the street, or the March of Dimes in San Antonio, were the ones that had come up with the idea of putting a haunted house in a tent. I'm not sure who came up with the panelized. The panelized happened the year before. So the second year that I worked with them, we actually built a haunted house in a pole tent on a parking lot off of Beltline in Dallas. And it made so much more sense to bring the haunted house into the city, where we could find a piece of asphalt someplace, a parking lot or something, to set the haunted house in, put it on a high visibility corner like at a mall or some kind of a shopping center, or we did it one year at a drive-in theater, and utilize that for the ground, set up a pole tent, build a facade to make it look like a house from the outside mostly, and then set the haunted house up in that, rather than trying to find a building that someone would rent you for a month. And haunted house at the time, there were lots of haunted houses, lots of nonprofit haunted houses in the Dallas market. Muscular dystrophy was doing them. Muscular sclerosis was doing them. The JCs were doing them. March of Dimes was doing them. So there were a lot of really low bid haunted houses going on at the time, and they were notorious for going into a space, renting a building or getting a building donated for them for a few months and then just trashing it. So it was really, really hard to find somebody that would rent you a building long enough to do a haunted house in. And that's probably even more difficult today. I mean, most haunted houses that are in buildings today they have to rent that space for the entire year, which makes the business model hard to work. It makes it hard to be able to make that money feasible.
There's a lot of haunts that do that. I mean, they just set up and tear down. And you're very fortunate if you have a building up all year long, because then you can run off-season events and stuff and other attractions.
But do you find that off-season events are really that profitable? I mean, I understand doing it. I mean, if you got the building there, why wouldn't you do it? But
right.
But is that really a profit center for you, or are you just trying to pay a month's worth of rent? Probably an escape game of some kind would probably be a better, something that you could run all year long that was just done in part of the haunt. That seems like it would be a better option. And I agree. If you're in a permanent building, you should be opening off season. Anything you can do to break that glass window or glass wall at October 31st and have the haunted house open past that time to increase your window so that you can spend some, so that you can make some money is always a good thing. That making people jump to that weekend after Halloween is huge, but you just have to do it and keep doing it and keep doing it until people get used to it. But it's hard because it's expensive and you're losing money for most of that time. But it's important to do because the more you can expand that window of Halloween, we're already opening in September. So the wider that you can make that window, the better off you're going to be.
And you might pick up some more customers from off-season events
and you might pick up some actors too. You might pick up somebody might go
Right.
through it that, didn't go through it in October and be excited about wanting to act for the following year. So there's lots of positives for opening off season. But typically it's, in my opinion, in my experience, it's not really a moneymaker as much as it is something to keep your actors involved so that they'll be, come and be excited about the following year and, keep your name out in front of people so that they can, so that they'll come back and see you again. It's just, something that you have to do, but not necessarily profitable.
Design question. Do you know how many parking spaces? It says, how many parking spaces should I get per acre of parking lot for an outdoor event?
Are you asking how many cars you can fit in an acre or how
many parking spaces? Well, I guess he's saying how many parking spaces should I get per acre of parking lot?
I think
So
the
does that
number.
mean parking
I think
space-
that number is 260, just off the top of my head. 260 per acre.
So it's 260 parking lot or car.
Parking
lot.
spaces per acre, and
Okay.
I'd have to look that number up. I do have that number written down someplace.
Okay.
You can assume that back-to-back parking is like 62 feet from stripe to stripe. So the center, if you've got from bumper to bumper, 62 feet is the width of a double of 90-degree parking back to back, which is really the most efficient in most cases. So if you figure, whatever the length of your property is, you divide that by 61, and then you multiply that, and then whatever the width is, you divide that by 9, which is how wide a car is, and that'll give you an approximate space of how many cars you can fit in there. You still have to have a little bit of circulation, but that 61 foot has the circulation in it. So back to back, bumper to bumper of two cars parked away from each other is about 61 feet. So if you do whatever the size of your lot is, and do it both ways to make sure one of them's not more efficient than the other one. But so every 61 feet, there's 2 rows of cars, and then every 9 feet, going the other direction is 2 cars. And that'll be able to, that way you'll be able to calculate what the number of cars is that you can park in your space. And then the other bigger question is how many cars do you need? In my opinion, to be able to do 20,000 people through a Halloween event, open Friday, Saturday through the month of October, you need to be able to hit about 700 people an hour. And you're not going to need that. You're not going to need that capacity all the time, but you're going to need it, for a couple of hours on your busiest nights. So being able to hit 700 people an hour, and that's a pretty tall number. Most of the haunted houses in the United States average probably, somewhere in the 200 to 300 people an hour. So you're talking about doubling probably the capacity of the average haunt. But to be able to hit 20,000 people in a season, which is where I think people are, where you start being profitable, you have to be able to get to that 700 people an hour. And you're not going to need it much, but you're going to need it for a few hours on your big nights. And the thing about it is that, if it doesn't matter how good your haunted house is, if people had to wait, 3 or 4 hours to get in, they're going to be pissed. So you're trying to, you don't want to chase people through the haunted house. You don't want them running through it so that they're going through it so fast that they don't see anything. You want them to be in there for a while, but you also want to get the next group in. So you need to make sure all of your room designs are scare forward. You don't ever want to scare the front guy in the group backwards. You always want to scare from the sides or from the back, top and bottom, but never from the front. So you don't stop your lineup. But so you're scaring forward as much as possible, but at the same time, trying to give them a show on the run.
What do you think about using time ticketing for cutting down on parking, cutting down on waiting?
A huge believer in time ticketing. I've been preaching time ticketing for at least 10 years now. And the reasoning for that is that, one, you get the money's in your pocket before anybody ever gets in a car. So if it's sprinkling, or if there's some other party that they would rather go to, that makes it even, they're either going to bite the bullet and go to the haunt, or if they don't go, you still get the money. There's 10 or 15% of the people that bought a ticket on time ticketing that don't show up. So some of that's free money, and it's money that you get before you have to open. So it gives you an opportunity to throw that money at advertising or to spend it on something else that will make you even more money in the long run, because you've got it in your pocket before people even leave the house. So, but yeah, I started preaching. I did a seminar at Transworld about time ticketing 10 years ago. And a few people started trying to do it a little bit, but it wasn't until COVID. When COVID hit, there were a lot of people that jumped on it and then realized, the benefit of it. It keeps, especially if your parking is tight, or if your facilities are tight, you just can't handle a huge amount of people standing around. Time ticketing is definitely the way to go. And I always sell out 9:00. Everybody wants to go to a haunted house at 9:00 for some reason. So I always sell out right when I put my tickets on sale. I sell out 9:00, and then as the night fills up around that sold out hour or that 30 minutes, then I can decide whether I need to open that 30-minute block of tickets back up or not. It's also nice to have a little bit of a break. You don't want to break your actors, but the ability to slow down a little bit in the middle and give everybody a breather if you're really cranking is not a bad idea. Or, if you need the capacity, you just open it up and let it and sell those tickets as well. But that kind of primes the pump. If somebody was going to your website and saying, yeah, I want to go at 9:00, which is where everybody seems like they want to go at 9. So when if you sell out 9:00 and people look, oh man, I was going to go at 9:00, I better buy my tickets now. So it kind of primes the pump a little bit to get people to purchase tickets quickly because they think they're selling out, even though they're not.
I think Scarrett badges are one of the smartest things I've seen in the industry in a really long time. Scarrett badges are basically either pins or embroidered patches, kind of like merit badges, as they are, somewhat named after, from Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts and Brownies, and where after you've accomplished something, you can wear the brag tag of the embroidered patch. Some haunts put them on jackets, some put them on t-shirts, some put them on with the pins. I've seen them put them on lanyards. But the neat thing about them is they are very specific in what they are rewarding, and they're haunt-based images that reflect what's being rewarded. It's retention, it is bringing people back, and it's actually giving your haunters, your haunt performers, the ability to share that they are haunt performers. And, oh really, you're a scare actor, where do you do that? And then they will insert the name of your haunt right there. So it's also marketing. I've always been a big fan of Scarrett badges. I think they're great. So check them out, scarrettbadges.com. No, that is not a paid advertisement. That is just my recommendation. I think it's really cool.
ScottSwinson.com.
What are your thoughts on scare actor training?
Huge. Yeah. It makes, you can have a really cool haunted house that will suck if your actors are bad. And you can have a decent haunted house that can be amazing if the actors are good. So definitely, acting, training your actors is huge. I'm not good at training actors, but but there are a lot of people, a lot of haunt actors in the industry that tour and will come to your property. You can just pay them a few bucks and they'll come to your property and help you train your actors. And yeah, that's huge. The ability, and it's not rocket science, especially the way that I built a haunted house. You're popping out from behind shutters, you're popping through a curtain, you're popping through a drop panel. It's not rocket science, but you want to make sure, but if you have, especially in a situation where you have a lot of turnover in your actors, it's going to take them 30 minutes, an hour, maybe even 2 hours to really figure out the best way to scare somebody from that, whatever their spot is. That means that the first hour or so of your haunt, if you've got new actors in every position, that's the biggest problem with a nonprofit haunt that's trying to use volunteer labor, is that every night you're going to have a new crop of actors. And that means the first 30 minutes of your haunt, 30 minutes or an hour of your haunt is going to be weak, at least, if not horrible, because those actors have not been in that position before. So the ability to have somebody that has been in that position, that knows how to scare people, and training them ahead of time is huge, because it takes out that learning curve. It takes out that 30 minutes or an hour of opening every night that your haunt isn't as scary as it could be or should be, because the people are brand new.
The on sponsorships, do you have any ideas on how to get sponsors?
A sponsorship is literally a relationship. So you have to, and it takes time to build. So what you do is you come up with a multi-tiered package, so that there's a several $1,000 sponsorship opportunity down to a couple of $100 sponsorship opportunity. And decide what that's gonna, several $1,000s might mean, Haunted Forest, sponsored by, or McDonald's Haunted Forest or whatever. I mean, that is the the top ticket, and then they come all the way down to where you're just kind of adding them like a website or a logo on the website or something. And then because what you're trying to do is graduate them. You're trying to start them off at whatever level they feel comfortable with, and then you always under promise and over deliver, so that the people really feel like, and anything that you can do to make them feel that presence. If you can give coupons away, to everybody, and make sure your actors get them too, so that they can go use them at the restaurant or gas station or whatever it is that's sponsoring. Just make sure that you're doing something that feeds back to the company that they're getting a good deal for it. Put a tent, put a hospitality tent, on your property, and invite those people out to come, and spend the whole evening there, not just go through the haunt, but come out, have a couple of drinks, go through the haunt when they want to, maybe give them a button to fire an air cannon at the people waiting in line, or something, so that you can, so that you can give them maximum, the feeling that they got maximum result from that sponsorship. And then you go back to them the next year. And even if, and early on, and when you're first doing a haunt, be more than happy to take product. If you go to Pepsi and you say, we're doing this haunted house, we'd love to have you sponsor us. They may say, well, we can't give you any money. Most sponsorship money is divvied out by January of that year. So if you're trying to hit them up in August or September for a sponsorship, you're really looking at the following year, unless it's something that they already have, like product. So, if Pepsi wants to give you product as a sponsorship, take it, and then again, make sure that there's the feedback if they come out there, there's a huge Pepsi sign out there, you're either selling it, giving it to your actors, or whatever you want to do with it, but make sure that the presence is known, and that they're getting feedback for being able to see that, to see the result of of their sponsorship dollars, and then you graduate them. If you can start with product, and then try to graduate them to a few $100, and so eventually, I mean, there was a haunted house that I built for Linton Harrison that was in Madison Square Garden, and he got $50,000 as a sponsorship from American Express. So don't be afraid to go big, and don't be afraid to go small. There was a guy, I can't remember which haunt it was, but there was a dentist who just loved Halloween, and he would sponsor the haunted house, and all he was getting for his sponsorship was tickets. And he would send free tickets to all the people all of his clientele that were doing having their teeth worked on by him. He would send them free tickets, just as a bonus. Thanks for coming to me, and that's a really cheap way to build up some credibility. And any of that cash can go, and you always want to take whatever cash you get from that. Don't use it to build the haunt with. Throw that into additional advertising over and above what you're planning on doing. Whatever sponsorship you get, put that into the advertising as well, so that it will increase the number of people that are seeing it, and increase the number of people that are coming to your haunt and giving you $20 or whatever your ticket is, as well as increasing the visibility for the sponsor. If it doesn't make sense for the sponsor, he's not going to do it again. And so it's got to be something, send all your actors to whatever place it was, and make sure that they mention, oh yeah, we saw you at such and such haunt, so that they feel like they're getting positive stuff for their money.
Got to be a win-win.
Yeah.
Like you said, a
It's gotta be.
relationship.
And it's building a relationship, and that takes time. You're not going to get $50,000 in sponsorship your first season, but you might be able to turn that into some substantial money, if you keep providing, and again, under promising and over delivering.
Right. Going back to tent haunts, what kind of permits do what kind of permits do you need and where do you find them?
For a kids haunt, you say?
For a tent haunt
Tent haunt.
in a parking
Yeah.
lot?
So you need the same exact permit that you would need to build a building. And the problem with that is the sprinkler system. So in most cities and states in the country, a sprinkler system is required. However, they're required by code. However, the enforcement of that rule is all over the board. And the reality of a pole tent is that the structure itself, the tent itself, cannot carry the weight of the sprinkler system. Now, the panels can carry it just fine, but you don't tell anybody that. So if the structure itself cannot carry the weight of a sprinkler system, and in my personal opinion, I think the haunted house would burn to the ground before a sprinkler head ever popped, because the tent would melt away almost immediately, and there wouldn't be enough heat around the heads to make them pop if you sprinkled a tent. So in most cases, I've been able, in all but 2 cases that I've tried it, I have been able to convince the building department that we should not be required to have a sprinkler system in a pole tent. So you just have to know what you're arguing and make sure that, and go to the city ahead of time and make sure that they understand. Yes, the code says sprinkler system, but this is a tent. And if they say you need a sprinkler system, try to ask them what the appeals process is, which is another reason to do this a year out, because you're going to have to, because it takes time to do that. Try to appeal their decision that it was required to have a sprinkler system. And, and again, but you would go through the permit process exactly like you would if it was inside of a building. It's really the same thing. There is no such thing as temporary code. There might be for some electrical stuff, but not for anything that you would, in an assembly occupancy, which is what a haunted house is. So there is no, you don't get any benefit from being in a tent for in code wise. It's still theoretically a mandatory sprinkle. And I have sprinkled 2 tents. So in every case, I've been able to talk the people out of it, the building department out of requiring us to sprinkle a tent, except in 2 cases. One case, it was in an amusement park, and the amusement park said, when the fire marshal said jump, they said how high, because they had to deal with them on a daily basis, and they did not want to ruffle any feathers. So we ended up sprinkling that tent. And then there was another one that was in New York State that and my first thing is that we have a location. Do you have a sprinkler system in the building? If the answer is no, then you've got to go to the building department and make sure that they're not going to require that. And in this case, they took the plans to the city. They got them approved. They got them approved with no sprinkler system in the tent. I went out, set it up. We're getting ready to open it. Inspector came out and said everything looks great, except where's your sprinkler system? And we showed him a paper where it said that they said that was not going to be required. And he said, oh, yes, it is. So they had to add the sprinkler system to the tent. And they were able to do that. And they weren't near a fire hydrant. And I've tapped into a fire hydrant before to run water to a sprinkler system, but there wasn't one near this particular location, and we'd already set it up. So there was no way I could move it. So they actually allowed us to put a gasoline fired pump that was sitting at the location, and then had a tanker truck, a large truck with a tank on the back of it full of water that we were then able to connect to the sprinkler system. And then we ran that as a temporary sprinkler system. There's no such thing as a temporary sprinkler system either, but in our case it was. They had to take it apart. It was a huge mess and it really hurt their bottom line because of the money they had to spend on it. So that's the first question when you go to a city. What are your requirements? You don't tell them what you think you're going to need. You ask them what they think that you're going to need, and then try to follow that. But in most haunted houses in the country, a sprinkler system is required. The state of Ohio has waivered haunted houses that are under 5,000 square feet. I don't know why. I don't know how that happened. I'd love to do that across the country. It would be great for the industry. But as of now, it's the only state that has done that has made that step. And I would love to know the history of that. If anybody knows how that happened, I'd love to find out, because we'd love to do that at every other state. But every other state would require anything over 1,000 square feet would be required to be sprinkled. And even that's questionable, because the building code has a 1,000 square foot exemption, but the fire code does not. So, and the only opportunity that I've had to ask a building department and a fire department in the same room. I was at a seminar one time, where we had both people, both the representatives from both sides, and I said which code supersedes, because one of them says 1,000 square foot exemption, the other one says no exemption, doesn't say anything about an exemption. Which one supersedes? And their response was that the codes are equal, but if one is more strict than the other, then you have to go by the one that's more strict. So that means there isn't 1,000 square foot exemption for a sprinkler system, but I've seen a lot of people use that. So again, it's kind of gray.
So James Moore, he was saying, it seems most haunts share the same core room, attraction, and themes. Can you recommend any new or unique theme ideas that you haven't seen or you think we need more of?
The reason that the themes seem to be similar is because that's what's popular. I mean, and I'm big about multi-element, so I really push my clients towards doing multiple different attractions with multiple different themes and different styles too. You don't want every haunted house to feel like it's the same thing going through. So you need to change up the style of the haunted house as well as the theme. But the reason that the majority of them tend to be the same is because that's what's popular, and that's what, when I do multi-element, and I've done in multi-element in the past, and the client picks the themes. When I don't go to a client, I actually send them out this sheet that has every possibility that I can think of. It's almost like a Mad Libs, ad libs kind of game, to where they can check off Victorian Mansion, they can check off vampires, they can check off 1800s or present day. So it gives them the opportunity to kind of choose which the theme of each one of the attractions is completely from scratch, which means I've never done the exact same haunt twice ever, because or at least not since we stopped building kits for people, because they always come up with a different a different set of variables. Maybe it's not vampires this time, it's werewolves or whatever, but so it every one of them becomes slightly different. But yeah, it's industrial, which could be school or warehouse, some kind of power plant or something like that. It could be a residential, which could be I did a tenement haunt once where we had people felt like they were going through the inside of a tenement, abandoned tenement building. Victorian Mansion. I've always wanted to do a haunted house that was everything in the entire haunt was painted black and white, including the actors and their makeup, and then have giant bugs attacking the people that were going through, like an old 50s movie. So there are creative things that you can do within each one of the theme styles. And like I said, I've done probably over 500 haunted houses now that I've over my career designed and or built, set up probably 500 haunted houses, and none of them were exactly the same. Depending upon which rooms you want to go through. You can go through a Victorian Mansion, you can do the cellar and the kitchen and the bedroom, or you can do the laundry and the garage and the stables. It depends on, and you should. I mean, if you've got one haunt that you're trying to keep the same name of, it should have, from year to year, you should pick different rooms for the to tour, so that people feel like maybe they're going through the same haunted space, but they're just going a different pathway and seeing a different room. Makes it feel like it's much larger than it really is, and gives you the opportunity to make changes without completely ditching Victorian Mansion for another theme. And what I see is when I go through that process with clients, and they end up with a pirate themed haunt and a clown themed haunt and a hospital themed haunt, and then we build that and set those up. Those don't seem to do as well, especially right off the bat, as one that has that Victorian mansion in it. And people, you want to have something that when people walk up, they just say, "Yep, that's a haunted house. Looks just like a haunted house." And that's really, so as one of the themes, I almost always try to push my clients into something that is a Victorian mansion, because that's kind of the quintessential haunted house. Or at least it was when I was growing up. It may be completely different, and modern Gen Zs or whatever that are designing haunted houses may have a completely different opinion of that, and that's great. I am all for experimentation. Everything I do is an experiment almost. So I love to be able to get in and try to tweak something by trying to do it something just a little bit different than what we did before.
What do you think about having year-round things happening at the haunt? Not necessarily going to the haunt, but like add-ons, dinner with the monsters, using some of your icon characters off season and different events.
Laser tag is a great opportunity. Yeah, I think, I mean, if you're having to rent the building for the entire year to open it up for 2 months, then you've got to do something else. You've got to do more to try to help pay that rent. So escape games, any and everything that you can do that would drive revenue is important. So no, I'm fully behind trying to do all that kind of stuff. I just don't, and again, it's more to keep your actors involved and to keep awareness to the public than it really is as a profit center. And if people tell me that all the time. Yeah, we tried opening that first weekend after Halloween, but our numbers went in the tank. Well, yeah, you're not going to do Halloween numbers in November. You're not going to, but they might be as good or better than your opening weekend. There was one year that I went to Netherworld. Netherworld has always opened on Friday the 13th. And there was one year that Friday the 13th fell in November. So they were not only open the weekend after Halloween, they were open the weekend after that. And there was a line wrapped around the building, just like it would have been in October. If you can teach your clientele that, it's not a slam door on Halloween and the haunt isn't open anymore. You can teach them, if you just keep doing it, that you're going to be open for, past Halloween. And that, one more good solid weekend, it could be the difference between, eating and not eating for the rest of the year. So, so definitely you want to try to break that, invisible glass wall that is at Halloween, and make sure that your haunt is open the weekend after, because it's once you can get your clientele used to doing that, then it really opens up some more potential for you. And being open as much as you can throughout the year, I think it's important. I do not think it's a profit center, but it's great for your actors. It's great for training your actors. It's a great opportunity that you should take advantage of. And if the building is sitting there anyway, unless you've got some giant skull on the building that you have to take down every October and put back up to get it out of the way, you might have to rethink it. But in most cases, it's kind of a no-brainer to open up as much as you can. And maybe you change it up. I'm not a fan of people doing a flashlight tour or a glow stick tour of their haunt on the weekend after Halloween, but mainly because I'm trying to go and see that haunt. I don't want to see it. I don't want to see it with a flashlight or with a glow stick. I want to see it in real operation, because I'm still trying to see as many haunts as I can in October. So I'm not a fan of people doing that, but if that makes more sense of you being able to reach out to your people that have already been through the haunt once, and making sure that and giving them an opportunity to see it again in a different light, then do it. Because that's gonna, again, it pierces that invisible wall at Halloween, that a haunt can't be open past Halloween, and it might make you some money.
Well, we know you got back from a recent trip from overseas. One of the questions was, what do you think about the haunts expanding internationally?
That's beginning to be a big thing. I've done them in Puerto Rico, in Australia, and now Guatemala and Kuwait. I did some design work for one that was in Russia someplace, and I think that's getting bigger. I'm getting more and more people contacting me about doing haunted houses that are outside of the United States, and they're falling into the same trap, though, in that they're trying to open them for October, when in reality, in most of the world, they don't even know what Halloween is. So it doesn't make sense to open the haunted house near Halloween. It makes the most sense to open it in the middle of summer. That's the way Kuwait is. The Kuwait haunted house didn't open until like the 15th or 18th of November, because that's when their summer starts. Or that's when their winter starts. Their summer is so hot, nobody goes outside at all. So once their winter kicks in, now they've got all kinds of opportunities. And there's 3 haunted houses in that market, including the one that I did the last couple of years. So it's an opportunity for them to go. And yeah, they run on a trickle. You're not going to do 700 people an hour through those. You're going to do better. You're going to be do good to get 200 or 300 a night, but it's open daily for a much longer period. So your opportunity of making a huge amount of money is there. You just have to it just spread out throughout the year, or throughout the summer, or throughout the winter in their case. But so when I talk to these clients, I've got one in Bermuda that I'm getting ready to head out to. In fact, I was supposed to be there this weekend in Bermuda to look at his location. And he's planning on doing October seasonal, but I'm going to try and talk him into doing something that's more long term than that, because I think there's a possibility of making more money over the long run and leaving it up.
A question from Isaac, owner of Terror in the Tolson and the Crypt Haunted Attractions. Apparently, well, let's read the question here. We offer only your group of 8 or less through the haunts. For example, we have 6 total attractions for one price. How do you control when people panic or want to back out within the first or second haunted attraction? We had emergency exits and staff would have to stop other groups from entering. So I guess a good clean way to get people out quickly.
So that's an impressive event. It's six separate haunted houses.
That's what the
yeah, that's impressive. So I am assuming that's going to be at some kind of a fairgrounds or somewhere.
This is hauntedaz.com.
Haunted AZ.
The Crypt Haunted House.
Okay. So I mean, and it's going to depend on the size of the attraction. But in most cases, in almost every case, I always, when somebody sends me a floor plan and says I'm going to put a haunted house in this space, the first thing I do is draw a line that's 4 feet clear off of the outside walls and I leave that space open. So it creates an egress corridor that runs around the perimeter of the attraction all the way around, and then the entrance and exit have to kind of pass through that space. But if you leave that corridor clear all the way around, and if you have a spot that people are chickening out, early on into the attraction, then you'll want to have, an emergency exit, from the attraction into that space. You want to have multiple emergency exits anyway to dump people out into that space, so then you can get them out to an emergency exit door quickly. So if you have an emergency exit there, within the first room or two, to make sure that anybody that's freaking out can go out. You can the actor or whoever can send them into the backstage area or the egress corridor, and they can get out of the attraction, quickly without holding everybody up. Is the best way to do that, I think. It's interesting. I can see that happening in a summer seasonal haunted house. In a summer seasonal haunted house where people are walking down the street, they're on their way to the beach. It's like, oh, there's a haunted house, let's go in. And it's much scarier than they anticipated, because whatever their market is, whatever they're used to going through a haunted house in their market is not very effective. Then I could see them, freaking out because it was so scary and bailing early. But in a haunted house where in October, where they're going there to get scared. I mean, I don't think there's anything that you can do in a haunted house that would be up to code and be allowed by insurance that would be is too scary in a haunted house. I don't think there's anything that you can do legally that is too scary for that 13 to 30 bulk age group that wants you to just scare the crap out of them. I mean, put them in a bag and beat them with a hammer, and I'm still not sure they'd be satisfied that it was scary enough. So I got to come see this haunt. If it's scary enough that he's making people leave out the first the first room, then I got to go see that haunt. And you might also think about building up the scares throughout the attraction. Maybe if the chainsaw's in the first room, then maybe that's the problem. If you move whatever that scare is that's that effective to later in the show, so that you're kind of building up to the scare, maybe you can keep those people in longer. Because if you're a 6 haunt attraction and the people are chickening out in room 2 of the first haunt, now what do you do? Because they're going to be too afraid to go in the other attractions. They only did part of one. They're going to want their money back, but you did your job. You scared them, so they don't really deserve their money back. So it kind of becomes a marketing headache. You might even think about, and I would never suggest this to anybody, but typically, maybe just on a one-on-one basis, if you gave them a glow stick and said, if you'll take this glow stick, you can go through and the actors will not scare you, just to get them through the rest of the haunts so that you're not having to give them their money back. That might be a possibility. I never have thought that you should have a not so scary tour of your event, because you get the reputation of not being scary. And nor should I think that you should be able to, that you should be able to sell something to the patrons going through where they can, some kind of a shield that they show the monsters, and the monsters won't scare them if they show them the shield. Because the one time that I did that, I had 14-year-olds coming out of the haunted house saying that wasn't scary, but it's because they were, telling the monsters not to scare them. But I lost 30 people that were waiting to buy a ticket because, this 14-year-old came, there was 12-year-old came out and said it wasn't scary. So you have to be very careful with sending a mixed message, but maybe giving just one to that one person that's too afraid to go forward, might be able to get you, get them through the attractions without having to give them a refund, or without them, causing a scene and giving you a headache. But I would think about, if you're, unless the scene after that one is even scarier than the one that they're bailing out on, I would try to build up the anticipation. I love to do my best scare first and my next to best scare last, because the first scare kind of sets everybody up for the rest of the show, and then that last scare hopefully sends them out, screaming and laughing, and as entertainment to the line. I always put the entrance and exit of the haunted house side by side, so that the people that are waiting in line can watch the people coming out, to make sure, so that they can see that it's a quality event and see that everybody's having a good time. But yeah, I'd have to come look at your event and see what's going on. But definitely having some kind of an emergency exit, chicken exit, and there's a haunted house in a year-round haunted house that's in Niagara Falls that I thought was brilliant, in that it's a pitch black. You go through the entire thing, you can't see your hand in front of your face. But they tell you that if you get too scared, you scream nightmare, and they will come and get you and take you out of the attraction. Well, when they do that, they take you out of the attraction, they send you through an exit door that when you open it, alarms go off, and the big giant number says how many people have chickened out, flops over, ka-chunk. So they use, and that's where the queue line is. So the queue line is waiting to go into this attraction, and when somebody chickens out, they bring them out, they take them out through this, send them out through this door, make this big huge thing about it, about them chickening out. So that's kind of a cool deal that you can utilize that to your advantage, rather than it being something that hurts you, by making it part of the show.
Going back to time ticketing, we didn't discuss virtual queue line. This person, let's see, Megan, they have 4 different attractions. They use virtual queues and time ticketing. What do you think about, how would you organize all that with 4 attractions, queue lines, time ticketing, virtual queues?
What's nice about time ticketing, well, what's nice about a multi-element event is that your lines are shorter. So instead of having 400 people standing in front of one haunted house, you've got 100 people standing in front of 4 haunted houses. So it shortens your queue line, but you have to make people realize that they're and you got to keep people are kind of like moths, they all follow, so they look for the light. But so you don't want all 100 400 people in the one line and nobody in the other line. So by using a virtual queue, you hopefully you can tell them which haunted house to go to first. So that allows you to spread your load out between the multiple attractions. And that's what's nice about that, because if you just open your haunted house, especially if your haunted houses are nose to tail, which I don't believe you should do. If you've got a huge haunted house and when the first group goes in, it may be 30 or 40 minutes before they get to the last scare in that haunt. That's a long time for people to be sitting around waiting for somebody to scare. And then at the end, you got to follow that last group through and make sure that everybody's doing their job so that you can release them. It just becomes a nightmare, trying to coordinate all that. So breaking it into multiple pieces or having them side by side instead of nose to tail, as far as the attractions are concerned, allows people to go to the one that has the shortest queue line in it. So they can get through that one, and then maybe they have to go wait in the longer line. You have to be careful and make sure that that your capacity is the same of each of the attractions, or very similar, so that you don't end up with one long line at the end for one of the attractions. Because again, it doesn't matter how cool your haunted house is, if they waited 4 hours to get in, they're going to be pissed. So trying to make sure that they're all kind of similar, that the queue line is kind of similar, is big, and giving people the ability to see the line before they get in it, so that they can choose which one to go to first, is a good idea. But so yeah, did I completely miss that question? Or
I think so. I think they responded.
Okay.
I'm at the very top of the chat, so I'm kind of working my way down. So
Okay.
guys, we're going to try to get to your questions. Steve Riley, what is your opinion on rotating actors at specific time intervals so they get to work in different rooms through the night?
I love being able to have actors move to different locations. You may have somebody that you think is great at your intro speech, but he's sick one day. Then who do you put in that spot? So being able to have multiple people try out different spots, you might find somebody that's even better than the guy that you thought was great at that location. So I do believe that rotating people through the attraction and giving them an opportunity to scare in different places is a great idea. And what it gives you an opportunity to do is say that all of the positions in your attraction are first come, first serve. So in some spots you may, like a safety situation like the chainsaw guy or something like that, he may need extra training. So he may be completely separate from this. But if you say first come, first serve, the people that want to get in a certain spot because it's the best scares or whatever, they're going to be there early, even before they're getting paid. So they get into makeup quicker and they're ready to go faster. So it becomes an opportunity for people to kind of choose which scare they want to do, and sometimes that gravitates to the ones that are the best at doing it. So yeah, I really believe that you should rotate your people around. It keeps them from getting bored too, especially in a situation where they're a tech and they're just pushing a pole out all night long to scare people. And it may be a very effective scare, but he's getting bored out of his mind because he's doing the same thing all night long. Gives you an opportunity for him to do something different. But yeah, no, I'm all for that.
So what scares Leonard Pickel, or what makes you enjoy a haunt?
My greatest fear is falling, so heights freak me out. But in a haunt, and if I go through a haunt and you popped out and you scared me, I might get an adrenaline rush. You're not going to see me jump. But there have been haunts that I've gone through. It's usually because I'm looking under something that I shouldn't be looking at, didn't know this there was an actor standing there. So you can startle me, but you can't show me something I'm supposed to be afraid of. And so that's the way I design my haunt. I aim my haunted house at a 21-year-old white male because he's the hardest person to scare. He's going through with his buddies or with a date, and he cannot afford to be seen screaming like a girl. So I aim my haunted house at that. I target that person, and he's not going to be afraid of, some, guy with gross stuff on him, menacing, that menacing scare. He's not going to be afraid of that. He's going to be, you have to do something he's not expecting. And if you'll do that, you'll get him to jump after a while. I did a haunted house, owned a haunted house in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina for about 5 years. And it was a summer seasonal haunt. Thought, wow, how great would this be if I could do this year round? Yeah, well, it's tougher than it sounds. But and many of the times on a slow night, my wife was downstairs selling tickets. I was upstairs working on the magazine or some haunt design that I was doing. She would flip a switch, a light would come on, I would go scare the people, and then go back and do whatever I was doing on a slow night. And there was one time that this group comes in, and I put my bus scare first. So I had this scare that I did, and this guy looked like he's fresh out of the Marines or something, is walking towards me. I jump out, scare him, hit him perfectly right where I wanted him, and he didn't even blink. And it's just like, oh, this is going to be a rough group. But the next time I popped out to scare him, and this haunt was, because it was summer seasonal, it was designed to be a one-man show. So I'm scaring them at like 13 different spots before they leave. So I popped out and did my next scare. And when I did that, I saw him flinch a little bit. And it's just like, wait a minute, did that guy that I couldn't even scare with my best scare just pop out at this second scare? Did he just jump? And pretty soon he was holding his little girlfriend up in front of him like a shield at every possible crack, trying to make sure that I didn't pop out and scare him again. So I was able to train him, or to get him to actually get to the point where he was more frightened at the end than he was at the beginning, because I kept doing stuff that he wasn't expecting.
Design question: 20-foot spacing is required between haunts in Pennsylvania. Does that apply in a haunted trail that has several 960 square feet enclosed haunt structures for one attraction?
My understanding it was 50. Back when I was doing tents and we were doing multiple tent haunts, you had to have 50 feet between tents. So if you're just talking about 1,000 square feet structures, every so far on a trail, 20 feet, it actually seems a little short to me, but that's possible that the code says that. There's not, trails kind of fall through the cracks a little bit because, an open air haunt is not required to have a sprinkler system. If you've got walls and no ceiling or no ceiling and no roof, then you're not a building, you're a fence. So you're theoretically, you're not required to have a sprinkler system in that building, in that structure. So then if you cover some of the areas, because you've got a shack and you want to put a roof on it, is that roof really important? I mean, unless you're protecting, something from getting wet, electronics or something, does it really need a roof on it? If you leave all that open air, then you're not required to sprinkle it no matter how big it is, or no matter how close they are together. So I'd be tempted to leave the roof off, and you can, as long as you can put netting, you can put snow fence, you can put other things across the top of the space to give it the feeling of a ceiling, as long as it is 50% porous. So if you have an 1.5-inch board and an 1.5-inch gap and an 1.5-inch board and an 1.5-inch gap, that is considered to be 50% porous, so that the sprinkler system can come down from it, or that the smoke can escape out of it. So theoretically, you could do some things to make it feel like it had a ceiling and a roof without actually having a ceiling and a roof, and not have to worry about spacing it out to whatever the distance that they wanted you to do by code. But I don't know of anything, there's that 1,000 square foot exemption for a sprinkler system, but I have never seen anything about how often you can have those 1,000 square foot spaces. A semi trailer is about 80 square feet, I think. And so you can have one semi trailer, you can park another semi trailer next to it. They can't be touching because now the square footage is bigger. But how far does that gap have to be between those trailers before they're now considered, separate structures underneath that 1,000 square foot? 20 feet seems reasonable to me. Again, in my experience before with a larger tent, the rule was 50 feet. But I haven't come across that in a while. So, and again, talk to your building department or fire department and see what their criteria is and what they're thinking. But yeah, you just can't have 1,000 square foot in 5 feet and 1,000 square foot in 5 feet. But if you take the ceilings off of all that space, then you can. So you're already on a trail anyway. If it's raining, it's going to be muddy. So having the roof for that shorter period, it really doesn't have that much benefit, and it might even slow down the line, because if it's raining, if they're in the room, they got to dry off a little bit, so it'll take a while. You scare them or whatever they're doing, then they go to the exit and they may stand there for a minute before they run out in the rain again. So it might actually hurt you for them not to be getting wet the entire time that they're trying to go through the trail and through the building. So yeah, my understanding is it's 50 feet, but it could be 20 in PA. But really, that's you're really kind of trying to get around the rule rather than trying to do something that's up to code.
What are your thoughts about rated R haunts?
It's funny. I haven't seen one of those in a while. Every once in a while, those pop up.
Foul language, insult guests.
Yeah,
I've seen some extreme stuff.
I've been peed on in a haunted house before.
On purpose?
Pardon?
That was on purpose.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, they had.
Okay.
It wasn't a real penis, I don't think, but it still squirted water at me. So
okay.
Those have been around. They don't last. It's kind of like the alone concept. For a while there was, sending people through a haunted house one at a time was all the rage. Maybe it still is in some places, but the problem with that is capacity. I mean, how do you can't make any money unless you can charge $300 a ticket. You're really cutting your own throat for making any money, because your capacity is so low. So you can do something that's R-rated in a haunted house. In fact, there was Naked and Afraid. That's an interesting story. Haunt in PA that advertised Naked and Afraid, and for certain hours on Saturday night, people were gonna come in and they were gonna strip down nude, put their clothes in a locker, and then go through the haunted house and then go put their clothes on and leave. And the guy advertised it, and it went viral. Maybe it wasn't even called going viral. It was so long ago, but USA Today picked it up and all this kind of stuff. I saw it, and
I remember that.
and so it was huge. And the next time I saw the guy, I congratulated. He decided not. The property that he was going to do this on. He had part of the property that he was doing his haunt on was zoned for a strip club. So he had every right to put naked people in his Naked and Afraid haunt. And it wasn't the actors. The actors weren't naked. The people going through were naked. So it gave them every opportunity to do that. And but the city came to him and asked him not to do it, and so he didn't do it. He did it prude version, where you just took you left your underwear on, took your clothes off, but left your underwear on and went through. And I congratulated him when I saw him the next time on what a huge publicity stunt that was. And he told me, "Oh, Leonard, you don't understand. People were furious when I canceled it because they were coming from Europe, bought tickets to come to go do this haunt naked all the way through it." So, but he never tried it again. So I don't think, I don't know everything. I love experimenting, and God bless you if you can come up with something that I've never thought of or that no one in the industry has ever thought of. An R-rated haunt has been around. There have been R-rated haunts around. Periodically. They don't last, which kind of tells me that they're not profitable or there's not enough people willing to do it. The book age of a haunted house is 13 to 30 and leans slightly female in my opinion. And I'm not sure females want to go through and see naked people in a haunted house. Maybe they do. Guys, I can understand young guys wanting to go through it, but you'd have to be 18 to go through it anyway. So try it, see what happens. But I'm dubious. Maybe I'll fly out and come see it. But
yeah, I've seen some people do like a certain night, extreme night or something. Our problem was getting the insurance to cover it, because we got insurance when we first opened the Dead Factory. We were going to do a touch option.
Yeah.
And then our insurance got wind of it off our website and they canceled us. They're like, "No, you're touching people. We're canceling." So we had to find a different insurance company so we never tried.
The touch thing is interesting. When I first started doing haunted houses, we had just graduated from peeled grapes for eyeballs and spaghetti for brain. So, it's how far back I go. And at the time, the actors touching people going through was very common. And as an industry, we kind of pushed away from that as far as we could. There are some haunts that there's one haunt that I know of that has been touched for as long as it's been open, and it's probably been open for 50 years. And they do still touch people going through. They don't really brag about it though. They just do it. They don't really, and maybe if there's something in their warning, I can't remember reading that, but something in their warning that says that they do that, but they don't warn anybody, and they don't give you an option not to be touched. So, there are haunted houses that have been doing that for a long time. But when the latest kind of flash came in, I was in Salt Lake City and doing on a project, and I was going to all the haunted houses that were there that October, and almost every one of them except for one had an option to where either you were going to get touched regardless, and there was no way around it, or you were going to get touched unless you bought this $5 wristband, glow-in-the-dark wristband, and you had that on, they wouldn't touch you. Or if you just go through, they're not going to touch you. But if you buy this $5 wristband, then you're going to get touched. Or you buy this $10 necklace, and you're not only going to get touched, but you're going to get picked up and carried out of the room and get a private, meeting with one of the actors or something, so I hadn't really seen that anywhere else. It just kind of exploded the year that I was in Salt Lake City. And so that surprised me. And I actually asked one of the guys, I said, is this really making you money? And he says, "Oh yeah." He says, "People that are in line waiting to go in are telling the people that are coming out are telling the people waiting in line to go in to buy the full experience, buy the necklace, buy the necklace, buy the necklace." It's like, okay, well, and then I went through his haunt, and there were two girls with us in the group, and they both had necklaces on, and the actors totally ignored me and the other guy that was in the group, and all they did was harass the girls. So it made me wonder if the people that were coming out were telling the people going in that the only way you're going to get a good experience is to have a necklace, or whether it was a beneficial thing. And then the next year I went back and saw the same haunted houses in October in Salt Lake City, and the one haunt that did not have a touch option had introduced the touch option. So they added it to their event, even though it was it was one of the best events in the city, so it didn't need it. But then I went back a few years later and went back to look at them, and almost all of them had dropped their touch option. Almost all of them had dropped their touching thing. So I don't know. I'm not sure what happened, but it stopped being advantageous for them to push that concept.
We experimented with we called them monster shields. They were green glow necklaces. They were for younger age kids. We had a problem with, kind of like you said, our actors would just cut the show completely, and the adults that were with the kids
didn't get the show.
Didn't get the show.
Sure.
They were upset because maybe they got bunched in with a group of people that had the monster shield.
Right.
So they weren't getting they weren't getting the scare. So it was like, okay, we'll go back through. So we cut it. We might have did it 2 or 3 years, and then we cut that too.
When I was at the March of Dimes, there was a reporter that brought a school teacher, elementary school teacher, and a mother and a psychiatrist, brought him to the haunted house and took him through. And he was trying to get a story about how haunted houses are not good for small children. And the teacher came out and said, I don't really see anything wrong with it. The mother came out and said, she didn't like those kind of things anyway. And then the psychiatrist said, we don't recommend, it is good for children to face their fears, but I would not recommend this for a child that was under 10, because a child that's under 10 can't separate fantasy from reality. When he sees a dead body, it's a dead body. And at the time we had a 12 and under price. So it was just like, looking at that, we said, okay, fine. We're an adult haunted house. We're the scariest thing, there is. And we don't recommend it for children that are 13 and under. And that's how we've gone from then on. And anytime I've had a client that says, oh, we're doing multi-element, so let's do one haunted house that's for little kids, that haunted house has failed miserably, because a child that's 10 and under really can't get past the music. So it doesn't matter what's inside the haunted house. They just can't, they can't get inside. If they can make it inside the building, they could go through any of the haunted houses that you have. And so by year 2 or 3, all of those clients that insisted on having a child haunted house had dropped it, and now they were just all of them were adult haunted house. You can make a haunted house that's non-offensive, so kind of like a fun house, maybe, to put clowns in it, that a child can go through without seeing blood, gore, and guts, if you want to do that as one of your pieces. But it has to be an adult haunted house, because a child will go through an adult haunted house. An adult will not buy a ticket to go through a child's haunted house. So you have to make sure, even doing a daytime event for children, make it a different website, make it a different name, do as much as you can to separate the two, because you do not want to have the impression that what you're doing is a child's haunted house.
What do you think about actor retention? Things you can do to keep your actors coming back?
Employees, dealing with employees in today's market is incredibly hard. Luckily, haunted houses are something that's fun to do. Acting in a haunted house is fun to do. It's rough. It's its job, but at least it's fun to do. Scaring people is fun, and they deserve it. So, but yeah, no, actor retention is a huge issue. Even just employee and retention for all businesses is a huge issue. So you got to do everything you can. I mean, you got to perk them. You got to bring them in. And the idea is to try to make a community. Almost a cast of characters, or almost like I don't want to say cult, but some kind of a troupe, an acting troupe that are all on the same Facebook page. They're all sharing ideas, sharing stories, sharing stuff that happened, saying, hey, I need a ride, so that you build up this community that, when the actors come out to your haunt, they're coming because they want to work, because they want to scare somebody, but they're also because they want to see their friends. So you kind of build up this community so that the actors are dying to come, and they're crying when Halloween comes, because the season's over, and they're just chawing at the bit to come back. And you do something off season, and they're there to help you spread the word. And that's really what you're looking for, is, those actors that you have to drag out of the room because their voices are gone. They can't stand up anymore because their feet hurt, but they're still in there trying to scare people. And once you find, a good core group of those, then the rest will follow, I guess. But it's, you got to pull out all the stops, and you got to pay them. You got to pay them well, because they are the backbone of your haunt. They can make a great haunt horrible, or they can make a good, decent haunt incredible. But they're the backbone of your business, which is another reason why, even for a nonprofit, I don't recommend volunteer labor. I don't recommend volunteer actors, because you get what you pay for.
We had some good comments on that in the chat as well. Cast parties, good and bad reviews, highlight, praise actors, Garrett badges. Thanks, Dave.
Yep.
So yeah, anything you do to create a culture in your haunt, and we learned the hard way. You got to cut out the bad actors. I mean, there's people are causing drama or
Yeah.
causing a rift in the,
Yeah. Nip that in the bud because it'll just poison the whole crew.
yes. Dylan Jacobs, we put up and tear down our attraction. I would like to do a large facade. How would you secure a large temporary facade? It's probably more than you can probably explain here.
It depends on what surface you're on. You can always use, if you're on grass or dirt, you can always use guy wires and those like giant screws that hold motorhomes down in a storm. If you're on concrete, you just bolt it down. The facades that I do are built out of are panelized, but they're also screwed together with Simpson strong tie connectors. So, and those are designed to hold your house together when there's a hurricane. So they're designed for that kind of level of stress. But yeah, you either, if you're on concrete, you bolt it down. If you're on grass or dirt, then you'll have to use some kind of guy wires and corkscrews that you can drive into the dirt. If you're on asphalt, it's a little bit harder because you mess up the asphalt anytime you stick something in. It would almost be worth it, especially if you're going to be there for the following year or two, would be to core out a section of asphalt and fill it with concrete and put put some kind of a metal ring in it or a piece of rebar that you can tie the tent off to or tie the facade off to. But yeah, definitely do something that's structural. Do something that would stand up in a good wind, and then make it a little bit three-dimensional so that it's not like a billboard. And you could do that too. You could pole barn it by digging holes and setting some telephone poles down into the grade and filling that in and tamping it down and then attach everything to that too.
So we're almost done with most of our questions. It's 9:00. Had a couple questions myself. See, what's the most challenging thing in your career that you had to get past, and your biggest challenge? Was it a haunt? Was it an attraction you did?
The biggest challenge that I have is I guess finding clients, because when somebody comes, when somebody in the general public says, hey, let's do a haunted house, their first thought isn't, well, let's find an expert and call him up and have him walk us through it so we don't fall into the typical pitfalls that everyone else falls into. So and I've seen so many people. In fact, there was a dear friend of mine that started his own haunted house and never asked me a single question, and he was having trouble with it. And then I watched him do a seminar on his issues, and he kept saying, well, we did this. And it's just like, I would have told you not to do that. And then he explained what happened. Like, and then we did this. And I said, no, I would have told you not to do that. So he was a friend of mine and didn't even ask, when he started doing his haunt, what the best opportunity was for. So, you don't have to hire me, but if you hire somebody that's done this stuff before, it allows you to get past, to bypass some of the pitfalls, some of the potholes, some of the cliffs that people fall into. Ron Howard was driving by a building that he owned in San Diego one time, and he sees this line wrapped around the building, and he says, what the hell is that? And he says, oh, that's the line for the haunted house that's in your basement. And so he counts up heads, multiplies that by $20 or whatever the ticket price was, and he multiplies it by 31 days. And he says, wow, this guy's making $1 million. We're going to do that too. I'm Ron Howard. I've done haunted house. I've done horror movies. I can do this. And so he hired the guy that designed the haunt that was in his building, and they put 13 haunted houses across the country called Chamber of Chills. Put 13 of those across the country. And I went through 2 or 3 of them, and they were awful. They were so bad. But in each one of them, or almost all of them, were put inside of an interior mall, which is a haunting 101 no-no. You do not put a haunted house inside of an interior mall. It just doesn't work. I'm not sure why. There's several theories about why, but it just doesn't work. Just from experience, we know it doesn't work. And they had their queue line to going into the haunted house inside of a Halloween store. So they have a Halloween store with a line in it, which means people were just stealing stuff off of the shelves because the line was in the retail area. And then they went through this haunted house that really was a piece of crap because they had hired somebody that had no clue about, he was doing a haunted house in that basement, but had no idea, but his capacity was horrible. I mean, that's why there was a line wrapped around the building. It's because the capacity was terrible. So you got a low capacity haunt. People are pissed off in line. They're stealing stuff in the retail store. And by year 2, every one of those were gone. Some of them had changed their names and were still running, but there was no more Chamber of Chills in the city. So hire somebody that knows that's done it before, that knows what they're doing, whether they're partners or just, a consultant that can tell you, yes, do this, no, do not do that. I've made every mistake there is to be made twice because I knew it wasn't a mistake the first time I did it. I had to try it again with a few tweaks. And it wasn't until it failed completely the second time that I decided, maybe that was a bad idea. So that's what I sell. As much as what to do, I sell what not to do. And I am worth much more than my fee for over the time and trial and error that you'll go through without a consultant. So you don't have to hire me, to hire somebody to help you if you're doing it, especially your first year, because there are lots of questions, and every one of those that you make, the questions that are incorrect are going to hurt you.
And Alan says, when you coming back to Australia, Leonard?
I would love to go to Australia. I've got at least 2 clients, maybe even 3 clients in Australia. Yeah, I've got 3 clients that are in Australia, but they haven't called me back to help them again. So I don't know. It'll be a while. It may be a while.
Well, thanks guys for your questions tonight. Leonard, if you have time, go back through some of these, the chat. It'll be in the group in the Hunter's Toolbox. So you might answer some questions. I try to get to everybody. There's a lot of conversation going on through in the chat. So appreciate your time this evening, guys. If you want to go see this, it'll be in the Hunter's Toolbox. It'll be the event. I'll have it pinned to the top of the group for a couple weeks anyway, so you can go see this video, see the chat, see that everyone's got some good comments and suggestions in the chat as well. So Leonard, anything you want to say? Tell us where they can find you and hire you.
Just Google me on the web. I show up like a rash. Entrepreneurs.com is my website. There's a lot of free information there. So check that out if you haven't. If you've got questions, my phone number and email address are on there as well. So you can, if you got questions, let me know. If there's any way I can help you, let me know. I love to talk haunts, love to talk new concepts and new ideas. So if anybody's got some questions, let me know. And have a great season. It should be much better. How was your haunt, Brian? How was your numbers in the last? Everybody seemed to be down.
Well, I sold the Dead Factory 3 years ago. So I sold it to my brother. So I'm still doing social media stuff, website stuff, and I actually got to go play this year. So I was actually a scare acted one night, hung out another night, but his numbers were up.
Good.
We had a haunt in Columbia, Missouri that was shut down. They usually do a really good throughput every year, so maybe that had some overflow issue, that we were getting some stuff from Columbia because some of the talk within the crowd, they did come from that area. The haunt was closed, so they were trying to try a different haunt out. So, but good for him because now they're going to come back next year as repeat customers. So it was a good. worked out good. It was not enough. It wasn't so much they couldn't handle it, so the capacity was good. So
good. Yeah, the economy was down, and it was an election year. Both of those are bad for the haunt industry. Your marketing kind of gets lost in all of the political ads.
Yeah.
Sometimes, depending on the market. And people are hurting because everything's expensive. But so overall, I think the industry was down. So having a good year is good.
Right.
And next year will be better.
That's right. Bigger and better every year. Keep growing.
What, Halloween fall on a Thursday next year?
I haven't even looked that far out yet. I don't know. Barely know what's going on next week.
All right, man. Well, let's do this again.
All right.
Good to see you again, and it's good to see everybody else out there. And if you have any questions, you can shoot them to me directly at either entrepreneurs@gmail or leonardpickel@gmail, and entrepreneurs.com get you to me. So have a great season, everybody, and we'll look forward to talking to you soon.
All right, guys, and if you want to get more trainings like this and see some private stuff and see all of our old past trainings, HuntersToolbox.com. I'm signing off. Thanks, Leonard.
All right, thank you. Bye.
This podcast episode sponsored by Scare Badges. Get your Scare Badges at scarebadges.com. Also sponsored by Hunter's Toolbox. Take your haunt to the next level at HuntersToolbox.com. Thank you for listening to Haunt Topic Radio. Please leave a comment wherever you found this podcast. Each comment you leave will help spread the word to other haunters around the world. See you next time.